Into top 10 fantasy sleepers. Now, these are guys that I believe you will be able to get in late rounds. And when I say that, I mean, I'm saying, 11, 12. It could be even later than that. I really have no idea how deep your draft will go. But I believe these are guys you will be able to get in later rounds that can have a very big to at least a significant impact on your team. Now, that's my opinion. You were more than welcome to disagree with me, agree with me, or tell me just stop talking because you don't want to listen to me. I have no idea. You're welcome to say whatever you want to say. But, in my opinion at least, sleepers are the make and break players of your fantasy team. They are the guys that will determine whether you win or you lose your fantasy football season. I truly do believe that. I've watched it numerous times. You get these guys. The one year my girlfriend Carrie, she won it. She won our fantasy league that we're both a part of. And one of her biggest picks of the year was Vincent Jackson, who she got with her 12th pick. And this was before everybody knew Vincent Jackson. So either which way, I did my top 10 fantasy sleepers. Now I got wide receivers, I got some running backs, and I have one quarterback and a tight end. Mainly running backs, just for the fact that, let's be honest, running backs get hurt a lot, and you never really know what's going to happen. So, I started with that. Not started with that, but they're a large chunk. And then, there might be a guy or two you might say to me, oh, Dave, that's not a sleeper. But to be honest with you, in my opinion, he's not. Every one of these guys are nobody that you're going to consider with your first 4 or 5 picks. And that's how I looked at it. So as long as I'm right on that, we're doing okay. Based on how much time we have, we might even get into a top 10 fantasy bust just to have some fun with it. I'm not sure. We'll see how the rest of the show flows. But now please feel free to post your top 10s at our Facebook fan page. Sorry, I'm reading chat room too much. Our Facebook fan page at facebook.com/SportsZone on ClubZone. Once again, that's facebook.com/SportsZone on ClubZone, and you can paste your top 10 lists on there whenever you would like to. Chris, thank you for that. I'll give that a look in a minute. I have my Twitter account open, so I'll be able to get right to it. So starting at number 10, I actually went with a man by the name of Brandon LaFell. Brandon LaFell is the number 2 wide receiver over in Carolina with Cam Newton and Steve Smith on the other side. Last year, LaFell had 36 catches for 613 yards, 3 touchdowns. He, for his career, has 74 yards. He's been in the league for 3 years. He has 74 catches for a little over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. In my opinion, the guy has all the potential in the world to take over as the dominant number 2 in Carolina. I'm looking at it right now. He is in the lead to win the starting wide receiver job across from Steve Smith. His main competition is expected to come from David Geddes, who is currently on the physically unable to perform list as he works his way back from a torn ACL. Seyu Arijo-Tutu has looked pretty good in Carolina's camp, as well as the newly acquired Louis Murphy, who comes from Oakland. But it definitely seems like it's Brandon LaFell's job to lose, put it that way. If he doesn't get this, it's his fault. His best game last year was a 3-catch, 103-yard, 1-touchdown performance against Tampa Bay in late December. So trust me when I tell you, I really think this kid has a lot of potential. He is going into the 3rd year of his career. So, he's definitely set to move up in the rankings, or I guess you'd say be a much more impactful player. Now, is he going to win you, games by himself? I don't know about that, but he will definitely help your team win games. I truly do believe that, and I have him as my number 10 fantasy sleeper. At number 9, I have another wide receiver that I ranked a little bit higher than LaFell, mainly for the fact that, to be honest with you, nobody has the slightest clue whether or not Mike Wallace is going to return, when he returns, what he's going to do, so on and so forth. He's missed OTAs. He's missed everything. So Mike Wallace is going to need some time to get back up to speed. Not to mention, when guys miss that much time, they're much more likely for injuries. So I'm throwing Emmanuel Sanders out there. Now, a lot of people might be wondering why I'm not taking Antonio Brown. But in my opinion, I don't consider Antonio Brown a sleeper. I do not think Antonio Brown is a guy that you're going to say to yourself, man, I can get him in like round 13. Nobody's going to even be thinking to draft him. No, Antonio Brown's going to get drafted in this year's fantasy draft. Trust me, he's going to get drafted. He's a very talented young wide receiver. So I went with Emmanuel Sanders, who last year, this guy had 6 catches in the playoff loss against Denver for Pittsburgh. 6 catches for 81 yards. In the regular season, he had 22 catches for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the thing that gets me is his per catch average is over 13 yards. So that means almost every time the guy catches the ball, he's gaining a first down for your team, which means, AKA, Big Ben, trust him. He caught 2 passes for 19 yards and a touchdown in the preseason opener for Pittsburgh. He's currently a starter without Mike Wallace on the field, but he will become the slot guy once Mike Wallace returns, because Antonio Brown will be put at the number 2. Mike Wallace will take the 1. Sanders slides down to the 3. But the Steelers like to use a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. They don't line up with more than 1 tight end a lot of the time. Their tight end talent really isn't that good either. But I definitely think that Sanders will have an impact on this year's season. Now, this is a guy that you can wait. You might even be able to pick him up in a free agency type of setting instead of having to draft him. But I do think Emmanuel Sanders will have an impact on your team. So I do like him. I do. But at the same time, I'm definitely wouldn't be surprised that he doesn't have an impact. He can go either way, but I do think that if you can get this guy in a free agent situation or in a late round, you do it. At number 8 in my top 10 fantasy sleepers, I have a running back from Arizona named Ryan Williams. He was drafted a year ago by the Arizona Cardinals to back up and compete with Beanie Wells for the starting position. And he missed all of last year due to a torn ACL. But he is back 100% and looks pretty well. Now, what kind of impact will this guy have? We're going to have to wait and find out. But he's expected to play Friday against the Oakland Raiders. And Beanie Wells is still struggling with injuries. Coming out of Virginia Tech, Williams was known as an explosive playmaker. He was one of those every down potential kind of guys where you expected him that he could carry the load if you needed him to. But like I said, he tore his knee and missed all of his rookie season. But, it's a tricky injury, but I do think this kid's going to come back and have a hell of an impact on this team. I do think that you can find other running backs better, but this is all about sleepers and guys that, you don't expect to hear are going to do good, and then they end up doing good. So, you might want to look at them. You might not. It's up to you based on what kind of players you already have on your team. Now, the running back that I'm going to pick now, I actually like even better than him, and that's mainly for the fact that the starting running back on his team is injured and expected to miss at least 4 weeks, even though the guy does hope to make it by the time we have or by the time opening day gets here, aka September 9th. But Ryan Matthews is hurt. I like Ronnie Brown as a pickup, ladies and gentlemen. I do. I like Ronnie Brown as a pickup. Career average of 4 yards a carry. I definitely think that he can slide in and be the starter for San Diego. I also think that Ronnie Brown has the potential to be a talented player for this team. Now, Ronnie Brown was terrible over in Philadelphia last year behind LaShawn McCoy. But I'm sorry to tell you guys, LaShawn McCoy owned that backfield. There was no reason for him to really be there. Ryan Matthews is always an injury risk. He's constantly getting hurt. So like I said, you got a 12-team league. Ronnie Brown may be worth picking up, especially if you own Ryan Matthews. If he's a player on your team or you're going to draft Ryan Matthews, you may want to draft Ronnie Brown in a late round or go after him as one of your first free agent pickups. Because let's be honest, out of all the years Ryan Matthews has played, I don't think he's played every game his entire career. This is his third season. I'm actually looking at it right now. I'm curious to see how many games he played in. In 2012, he made 12 games, and last year he played 14. So that's a good sign in the fact that he's making over half the season, but he's not playing an entire season, which is what you want. Mike Tolbert, Jeremy puts in the chat room. I think that's actually a decent idea for a sleeper pick. But Carolina's a hard situation to juggle between Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams, and Tolbert. So that's a rough one, man. I like Tolbert because of the goal line potential. But I'm not 100% sure how many carries total he's going to get. That's the part I'm a little confused on. But I like Ronnie Brown in my number 7. Like I said, Ryan Matthews is a huge injury risk. There's no question about that at all. So having Ronnie Brown on your team could be a very, very good decision. At number 6 for my sleepers, and some of you guys might not consider him a sleeper. I went with him as a sleeper for the fact that I do believe that this is a guy not everybody's going to look at too early, which means you could have an opportunity to grab this guy, and he could have an impact for your team. He played in all 16 games last year for Buffalo. Even with a healthy Fred Jackson, they found time for him on the field. He had only 107 carries last year for 561 yards, but averaged 5.2 yards a clip, scored 4 rushing touchdowns. He also had 39 catches for 269 yards, averaging 7 yards a catch with 2 touchdowns. I think CJ Spiller could be a guy who on your team can have a major impact, and you don't have to draft him too early. He is the backup to Fred Jackson. But at the same time, I truly do think that CJ Spiller is a guy that, if given the opportunity, he truly can make a big impact on your team and a big impact for the Buffalo Bills. Jeremy, I like that sleeper. Sarah, I'll know if I'm going to the preseason game. I'll figure that out by Friday, so I can tell you on Friday's show. Sorry, that was a little random, but that is a fair question, and I want to go. So I will let you know by Friday. I just got to talk to my friend Justin, see if him and his girl want to go, but me and Carrie are down. And it's a night game, so we're going to try and get there early, drink, party, have a good time, all that fun stuff. But Jeremy puts in our chat room, Stephen Ridley on New England as another option for a sleeper, and I actually do not have him on my list, but I actually think that is a great idea as well. He's going to be filling in for the law firm, aka Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, and by doing that, if he puts up similar stats to Green Ellis, he's going to be a decent fantasy player. Now, is he going to be a guy you're going to take early? Obviously not. That's the whole idea of him being a sleeper. But Stephen Ridley could be a very good pickup for you people. For me, for you, for anybody. So I like Stephen Ridley. That's a good idea right there, Jeremy. Thank you for contributing. I appreciate it. Pixel, I'm a little disappointed. I expected you to have at least 1 or 2 sleepers. Chris, you as well. We have an anonymous in the chat room. Anonymous, if you got any sleepers you'd like to share with us, please do. I understand, though, at the same time, you want to keep them to yourself. That's fair enough, too. But either way, ladies and gentlemen, I got CJ Spiller as my number 6 fantasy sleeper. He wasn't used too much when Fred Jackson was healthy, but at the same time, he still had an impact on the team. He did score a touchdown in 4 of the 6 weeks that Fred Jackson was injured, which is actually really impressive, and averaged 18 touches a game in that same stretch. He may have a bigger role in this year's team. He only averaged 3 touches a game with a healthy Fred Jackson, but Fred Jackson seems to show a steady habit of getting injured, so don't be surprised if Fred Jackson misses a couple of games, and then boom, CJ Spiller's your starter, and boom, you're so happy you listened to Dave tell you CJ Spiller as a sleeper, and make sure you draft him. Now, similar to what you would do with Ryan Matthews, you might want to draft him if you draft Fred Jackson. That's something you might want to consider, or not. It's not that big of a deal either way. I'll be completely honest with you. I will say, though, I like him a lot. So that's my opinion. If you're drafting against me, you might want to take CJ Spiller before I do. We'll put it that way. So that's our top. That's 6 through 10. I got CJ Spiller from Buffalo at number 6. Ronnie Brown from San Diego at number 7. Ryan Williams, the running back in Arizona, at number 8. Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver from Pittsburgh, at 9. And Brandon LaFell, wide receiver from the Carolina Panthers, at 10. Sitting here looking at my list, I almost wish I put Brandon LaFell higher because I really do think that kid's going to have a hell of a year. And while we're talking about wide receivers, we're going to move into my number 5 spot. And my number 5 spot goes to Alshon Jeffrey, wide receiver on Chicago. He is a rookie from the University of South Carolina. He is a big man, 6'3", 216 pounds. He had 4 catches for 35 yards in the season opener, and apparently is impressing his coaches in Chicago. He ran with the first team on Saturday doing red zone drills and hauled in 3 touchdowns. And that's why I'm saying this guy could be a sleeper for you. There's no guarantee that he is going to have, 10 catches for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns and that kind of stuff. But what I will say is if they get inside the 15, inside the 10, and they want to throw up a ball, do not be surprised if the ball goes Alshon Jeffrey's way. After his sophomore year in college, he was considered a possible top 10 draft pick, but his, junior season in college was, not very positive, but a lot of that was based on the fact that his quarterback play was terrible, and he put on some weight, but he lost most of that. He impressed guys with his, skills of, the soft hands that he has and his jumping ability. He's going to most likely, in my opinion, end up the number 2 wide receiver opposite of Brandon Marshall. And Brandon Marshall, between the two, is much more likely to draw double coverage. And Jay Cutler can throw the ball. So Cutler can get him the rock. So I think Alshon Jeffrey should be a good pick for you guys. Now, I don't think he's going to fall as far back as, say, Brandon LaFell might fall. But I will say he's going to have an impact. I think he's going to have touchdowns, not as many yards. So if you're in a PPR league, I can't lie. I don't know if he's going to be the greatest pickup, but if you're not in a PPR league, Alshon Jeffrey, to me, is without a doubt a solid option of somebody to pick up. So with that said, we're going to move on. And now we're going to jump to my number 4. And this is where I got interested. Like I said, I sort of wish I put Brandon LaFell higher, and my number 4 spot probably would have moved back a little bit. But I said Josh Freeman, quarterback from Tampa Bay. He had a rough year last year, but the year before that, man, he played awesome. And not only is he a solid quarterback, in my opinion, but he's a running quarterback. He's a big guy, 6'6", 248 pounds. I truly do think he has the talent to play really, really well. In his first season, he only played 10 games, completed almost 55% of his passes, 1,800 yards, had 10 touchdowns, but 18 interceptions. And then all of a sudden, his second year came, 2010, plays all 16 games, completes over 61% of his passes, throws for over 3,400 yards, has 25 touchdowns, and only 6 picks. He also ran the ball 68 times for 364 yards, but no touchdowns, which sucks. But what are you going to do? And then last year, for some reason, as a quarterback, he sort of fell apart. His completion percentage actually did go up, ladies and gentlemen. His yards went up, but he only had 16 touchdowns compared to 22 interceptions, which is never a good thing. But he also ran the ball for 238 yards and had 4 rushing touchdowns. I'm not saying you draft him as a starter, okay? Not trying to say that. What I am saying, though, is if you draft a quarterback on a team that you think your quarterback can get injured, let's be honest, Freeman would be a good fill-in. So, you know, I agree with Pixel Junkie. I think Freeman had a bad year last year. I think with the new team that they're putting around him, I think with the new coaching staff, I really, really do think that Josh Freeman is going to step up his game and return more to the 2010 form than he was last year in 2011. You know, I really do like that. Jeremy puts in our chat room that not to keep pushing New England, but Aaron Hernandez should be valued much higher than he currently is. He will be returning punts this year and run plays out of the backfield. That's a double threat as he is a great receiver and red zone target. And Jeremy, I completely agree with you. I think Aaron Hernandez is a solid pick. Now, is he first couple rounds? I don't think so. And that's duly based to the fact that there's enough tight ends out there that will most likely have a better season than him. He's the number 2 tight end on his team, a.k.a. you can't really put him above some of the number 1 tight ends that are out there in the league. Now, that's just my opinion, but I think it's true. I do think Hernandez is worth having on your team and worth a draft pick. I would not wait too long on the guy, but I definitely think you can wait on him, and I do understand why he's not ranked very high, but I'm sure he deserves a higher ranking than he may be getting. But I like Josh Freeman as a fantasy sleeper this year. I just think he's a guy you can pick up, have on your team, and be able to put in when you need him. I do agree with the fact that he does have a rough schedule. They play the NFC East, and I believe they play the AFC East. I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But either way, I like Josh Freeman. My number 3 fantasy player is a guy that a lot of you have heard his name, but I don't think many of you would say to yourself, oh man, I really need to make sure I draft that guy. As Jeremy was mentioning Aaron Hernandez, I would put this guy right with him. Coby Fleener, tight end in Indianapolis. Andrew Luck's teammate from college in Stanford. Andrew Luck's his quarterback now as well. Wow, Panthers, Giants, Cowboys, first 3 games for Josh Freeman this year. All right, well, you're not going to start him your first 3 weeks, huh? That's for damn sure. Maybe Panthers, just for the fact that division games, he might really step up his play. Not really sure, but either which way. I do like Coby Fleener, though, the tight end from Indianapolis. You know, him and Andrew Luck going to college together is a benefit. They already have a rapport together. Fleener is a good route runner. He's a solid tight end. Big body guy, 6'6", 250 pounds. You know, as they say, you know, I'm looking at a little breakdown. They say he should be comfortable in Indianapolis because, you know, playing with Andrew Luck. You know, Luck is a big, strong, accurate thrower, and 6'6", 240 pounds. Fleener is basically a big wideout. He had 17 touchdowns in the past 2 years at Stanford and averaged almost 18 yards a catch with Andrew Luck as his quarterback. Now, they don't have the greatest offensive line. Their run game is not that well. Outside of Reggie Wayne, their receivers are a little shaky. But I do really like Fleener, and I think he's a guy that can have a hell of a season for you in fantasy football. Just guessing, but I really, really like Coby Fleener this year. So I have Coby Fleener as my number 3 sleeper in football. I really hope the guys that I play against in my fantasy leagues aren't listening today, which is rare. I always want everybody to listen, but because they're going to steal all my players. Man, I don't want that to happen. Now, this guy My number 2 guy I picked, and I mainly picked him due to talking to a couple Steeler fans. They all believe he's going to be the starter. And with that said, we had to go with him. So I like Isaac Redman as my number 2 fantasy sleeper. Running back from Pittsburgh, Rashard Mendenhall is still months away from being able to play football. And Isaac Redman has filled in for him numerous times. He's sort of a dual threat kind of guy. In his career so far, he's only got 162 career total carries. He averages 4.6 yards a carry, which is a solid little number. 3 touchdowns total, all 3 coming last year. He also has 27 catches for only 150 yards, but he averages, I'd say, about 6 yards a catch. Had 2 touchdowns, and that was in his rookie season. So, I mean, the guy only has 5 total career touchdowns. He doesn't even have doesn't even have a total of 1,000 yards career between catching and receiving. And I understand why some might be, I don't know about this one. Look, they're going to need a starting running back in Pittsburgh. No matter how you look at it, they're going to need one. And Isaac Redman's going to be the guy. So I say he's a sleeper because nobody's going to jump after this guy. Nobody's going to be like, oh my God, I got to get Isaac Redman. He's filling in for Mendenhall, the hurt guy. No, nobody's going to do that. But I think if you can get Isaac Redman in a later round, I think he was well worth picking up. Now, Pittsburgh does have a rough schedule. You obviously got to play Baltimore. You got to play Cincinnati. They play against the NFC East this year. So it's not like they have some walk-in-the-park schedule. But I do think this kid has all the potential to really do something with himself. He definitely looks like the sad to say, the last man standing in Pittsburgh's backfield. Their other backup, Jonathan Dwyer, broke his foot. Rookie Chris Rainey is fast, but he's 5'8" and 180 pounds and is likely a gadget play kind of guy. So, Redman the Steelers love Isaac Redman. Isaac Redman loves him some Steelers. 6 foot, 230 pounds, so he's a pretty tough guy, good for red zone. He's very untested, like I said, and their offensive line's not the greatest, but we'll see. And we'll also mention Todd Haley likes to throw the ball, so the offense coordinator of Pittsburgh. So don't be surprised they throw the ball a lot, which they already do in Pittsburgh anyway. I don't know the big deal about why everybody's saying, oh my God, it's such a big deal about him, being the new offense coordinator. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. I like, that's what I mean. That it could be a rough start of things with Isaac Redman, hence why you don't want to take him early. Their first 3 games for the Steelers: Denver, Jets, Raiders. Now, all those games, in my opinion, actually can go either way. You got to figure that the Broncos, Jets, and Raiders all had decent run defenses last year, but at the same time had games where they gave up a lot of rushing yards. So it can go either way. But I like Isaac Redman. I think you can get him a little bit later in the draft, and he can step up pretty well for you. Now, my last number 1 fantasy sleeper. I don't know if it's even fair to call him a sleeper, hence why he's my number 1 fantasy sleeper. But I think a lot of people are going to draft Ahmad Bradshaw as the New York Giants starting running back. And I understand why you would do that. But out of the 2 running backs the New York Giants have that they will rotate, I actually like David Wilson more than I like Ahmad Bradshaw. Bradshaw constantly is fighting injuries in his feet, and this David Wilson kid has shown that he can cut, he can groove, he can move, he can slice, he can dice. Sad to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up a nice solid numbers against my Cowboys in week 1 on September 5th. Wouldn't be surprised about that at all. The Giants do not have a lot of running backs on their team. DJ Ware. Shout out to Joe Martinek, real quick, our buddy from Lake Apacon. Excuse me. We're going to have to try and get in touch with him, see if we can bring him on the show too. That'd be pretty damn cool. But shout out to Joe Martinek. We like him. David Wilson in their first preseason game for the Giants had 7 carries, 43 yards. That's 6 yards a clip. 2 catches for 26 yards. That's 12 yards a catch. He did get his carries against the reserves, but still showed that he has the ability to break big plays. He had a run of 26 yards and another run of 17 yards. He returned 2 kickoffs and could also win the return job. Now, that would make me a little nervous. You don't want your fantasy running back returning kicks, because if he gets injured, there goes your fantasy running back. They say that Wilson's a track star whose game resembles the man he'll back up in 2012, Ahmad Bradshaw. Rugged player who invites contact despite a relatively small frame. He does show some shaky field of vision, making unnecessary cuts, but I do think this kid has a lot of talent. He's not that good of a receiver or blocker. I think he looked pretty good receiving. Blocking is a little different. But if that's true, he won't get on the field too often in third down. And they say he had a major fumbling problems in college. But let's be honest, Tom Coughlin is the key to solving fumble problems. Call Tiki Barber. Look, I think this kid has a lot of potential. The only thing I don't like about him was he was born in 1991 and he's playing in the NFL, which just makes me feel old. And I'm sure a bunch of us can agree with that one as well. 1991. What a jerk. So young. Anyway, to me, that's solid. You missed the Top 10 Tuesday, friend. I'm sorry, but I will give you a quick rundown of my top 10 for you. Number 10, Brandon LaFell, Carolina wide receiver. Number 9, Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver from Pittsburgh. Number 8, Ryan Williams, running back from Arizona. Number 7, Ronnie Brown, running back from San Diego. Number 6, C.J. Spiller, running back from Buffalo. Number 5, Alshon Jeffrey, wide receiver from Chicago. Josh Freeman, starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kobe Fleener, tight end from Indianapolis. Isaac Redman, running back from Pittsburgh. And David Wilson, running back on the New York Giants.